Morning, class. How was your guys' weekend?
It was pretty awesome. I made some snow globes.
Ooh, some snow globes.
Made some snow globes?
Yeah.
What'd you guys do?
Well, my mom owns like a glass blowing shop.
Oh, well, that's
And so
fun.
we just created it that way. It was pretty epic.
That is really cool, Sean. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so today we are going to go over something called the concept mastery routine. And if you guys remember from yesterday's lesson, we were reading the book on reptile kingdoms. And we went over a little bit after that. So then after we look at the pictures of the different reptiles from the animal kingdoms, we noticed that there were a few things that they had in common. And then today we're actually going to put those into a graphic organizer and be able to tell exactly what a reptile is. Because I know, Sean, you said you liked reptiles a lot, and you said you wanted to get a pet snake at some point in time.
Sure, yeah.
So, what is the concept mastery routine actually? So it's like I said before, it's the graphic organizer that you can plug in a key topic. So what we're doing today is reptiles, and then we can classify what exactly makes a reptile and what doesn't make a reptile. Do you guys have any previous knowledge on reptiles? We read the book yesterday, but not too much. Do you guys know anything about them? Do you guys know any characteristics about them at all? Or have you ever seen a reptile?
Yeah, I've seen some snakes.
Some snakes, yeah, good job, Sean. Snakes is an example of a reptile. There's also a bunch of other examples of reptiles too. So, we're going to start off with concept. So what it stands for is, so you see right here it goes concept. It's the C-O-N-C-E-P-T. So it started us off, the C stands for convey the concept. And then O is the overall concept. And then N is note keywords, C is classify characteristics, E is explore examples, and P is practice with new examples, and T is the final one where we tie down the definition of what an actual reptile is. Okay, so today, like I said before, we're just going to be going over classifying what a reptile is and all that other stuff, so you guys can be able to tell if you see something walking on the street or crawling through a road that you know if it's a reptile or not. So we're going to start off with number 1 here. And you guys have those graphic organizers that I gave you, right? Correct? I'm on you guys. If I can get you guys to pull those out with a pencil, and then when you're ready, just put your pencil down and look up at me. Good job, good job. Okay, so we are going to start with the C, which is convey the concept. And you can see, I'll write them over here to make it easier. We can just put a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And these numbers will actually match up with your graphic organizer. So if you look up here in the small box, you'll see a number 1. And that's going to match up with the C for the convey the concept. So today our concept is going to be reptiles. So you guys can just take your pencils and write in reptiles up here. And so reptiles are actually, they're a group of animals or something like that. And they actually fit into a bigger prospect. So, us humans are considered to be mammals, so it's kind of that same different concept, but I'm going to help you guys out with a little bit. So reptiles actually fall under the characteristic of vertebrates. So what a vertebrae means is they always have a backbone too. So something runs up their back. So us humans have spines. So then you can go over here to the number 2, which is the overall concept, and put it in vertebrae. If you guys don't know how to spell it, I'll put it up here for you. Everybody got that? Any questions so far? Do you guys understand how reptiles are part of the bigger concept of a vertebrae? Okay, good job. And then number 3 here is note the key words. So when you guys were looking at those pictures yesterday during the reptile kingdom, what were some things you guys noticed that all the animals had in common? Is there anything specific that you guys noticed, in all the pictures?
They lay eggs.
They lay eggs. You did notice that they all had little pictures of eggs by them. So that is going to be a keyword. You guys can put it up here for number 3, the note keywords, and put lays eggs. It's kind of strange to think that even snakes can lay eggs, right? Because those things are pretty small. Did anybody else notice anything that they had? Amelia?
They all had scales.
Scales, you're right. So reptiles all are going to have scales. Or also there's something called skewed, which are just basically mini scales, but they have a different name. So you guys can put scales or skewed, and skewed is S-C-U-T-E-S. An example of like skewed would be so like a lizard. You know, they don't have like the thick scales, but they have like the leathery type skin. Did anybody else notice anything?
Yeah, they're kind of mean.
They are kind of mean. Yeah, they're right. My grandma had a pet lizard. That thing was very mean. We can put mean down too. Another one that lizards have in common is that they are kind of like us humans, and they all breathe through their lungs, and they do not have gills like fish or anything like that. Even though a lot of the time they do spend their time in the water, they still breathe through their lungs. So you guys can put breathes through lungs. Did you guys notice anything else at all? Chilling?
They're cold-blooded.
They are cold-blooded. Wow, you're smart. You knew that. We haven't even gone over that yet. So what cold-blooded is means they don't have a fixed body temperature, and their body temperature adapts to what their climate or environment is. So if they say they're in a cold area, their blood will turn warm so they don't die. If they're in a hot area, their blood will turn cool, so they have like kind of like a built-in air conditioner, which is really cool. Some other things are, so you know how we had the vertebrae up here? Who remembers why I said vertebrae? Like what a vertebrae is? Remember class 5, the thing running down their back, the spine? So that's what a vertebrae is. Everything has like a backbone or a spine running down it. So since they fall into the classification as a vertebrae, we know that all reptiles are going to have a backbone or a spine. So that can be another key feature. Did you guys have a question over here or something?
No, I have another example.
Ooh, what's the example?
Reptiles don't have hair.
They don't have hair because they have scales or skeweds, right? It'd be kind of scary to see a hairy snake, wouldn't it? Do you guys have any like examples that you know of reptiles, or what you think might be a reptile?
Frog.
A frog. Ooh, that's a good one, Sean. I remember somebody said a snake earlier too, so we could put a snake on the board. So if you guys want to put frog and snake, you got one, Shilling?
Isn't a frog an amphibian?
You're correct. We're going to get to that in a little bit here. See here, we can see the non-examples and examples. Good job, Shilling. You guys all caught up with the key words? Anybody have any questions on those? All right, so now we are going to explore some examples and non-examples. Actually, we're going to classify the characteristics first. So you see all these key words here. They're going to fit into either the always present, the sometimes present, or the never present category. And like something that's always present, for example, like in humans, we all give birth to live animals, or humans, whatever, so mammals. So that one would be always present for humans. But when we go to reptiles, we can start with like the lays eggs. Which one of you guys said reptiles lays eggs? That was you. Oh, good job. So do all reptiles lay eggs, or do just some of them lay eggs?
I think they all lay eggs.
You are actually correct, yes. All reptiles do lay eggs. So you can go over here to number 4, and number 4 over here is class for the characteristics, and put lays eggs as always present. When you think of an egg, a lot of times you think of like a hard egg, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Some reptiles do lay like soft eggs that kind of like feel like leather. Scales or skewed. I remember you said that over there, Amelia. Do all reptiles have scales, or do only some of them have scales and skeweds?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Well, I can tell you, all reptiles actually do have scales or skeweds. You don't see any of them that have like fur or hair, like we said down here, or like skin. So we can put scales and skeweds for always present. And then since we know that they always have scales, we can know that they don't have hair, so we can put hair in the never present one. And then, so we can cross those off. Sean, you thought that reptiles were mean, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever met a nice reptile, or have you ever seen like a snake that doesn't bother that you actually didn't think that was mean?
There's some cool turtles.
Turtles, ooh, I like turtles too. Yeah, so we can actually put, since we know that not all reptiles are mean, some of them like actually are minding their own business, just slithering through the grass, we can put the sometime present for mean. Because some may be mean, but some may not be mean. Kind of like your classmates, right? And breathes through their lungs. Like I said, they don't have gills. There's no reptiles out there that have gills. They are all going to breathe through their lungs. So we can always classify that one as always present. If you guys want to abbreviate it by putting lungs, you can do that too. And I remember somebody said cold-blooded. Which one do you? That was you, Shaylin?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? Are all reptiles cold-blooded?
I think so.
You are correct. They are cold-blooded. Like I said, that means they can adapt their blood temperature to the environment. And we were talking about a frog, and Sean, you remember you said you thought a frog was a reptile, and Shaylin actually was wondering if it was an amphibian. So for now, we are actually going to put the frog down here where we don't quite know for sure what it is. So between here and the open space. It doesn't really have a number, but it's going to be right between the open space there. And lastly, there was a snake. So we can just put snake, make another line here, and put it as always present, since we know snakes are always going to be reptiles. And since all of these things over here are always going to be present, there's going to be the things that are opposite that will be never present. So for example, they always have lungs, which means they're never going to have like gills. And they are always cold-blooded, so they're never going to be warm-blooded. And so on. So that was number 4, to classify the characteristics. Does anyone have any questions on classifying those characteristics? So we just put them into the always present, the sometimes present, or the never present. All right, so the next one we are going to do is going to be explore our examples. So we are going to create some examples from these keywords that are always present, sometimes present, never present. So we see one right here that's a snake, actually. So that's going to be an example of a reptile. So you guys can immediately just put that one down to the actual example right here in the circle. And just write snake. And then I also heard somebody say turtle, too. So a turtle's an example of not having scales, but skewed, that's a skin type thing. So we know that they have scales or skeweds. And does anybody know if turtles have gills? Or do they breathe through their lungs?
Their lungs.
They do breathe through their lungs. So that's another always present characteristic that we see here. And do we know that turtles are cold-blooded or warm-blooded? They are in the environment, they change their blood temperature to their surrounding environment. So what does that mean?
They're cold-blooded.
Yep, you're correct. So by those 3 always present things, we can tell that it's more than likely a reptile. And when we go over here, we see that do turtles have hair?
No.
Do turtles have gills?
No.
And they are cold-blooded, like we already said. So we can classify that the always present ones will make the turtles an example rather than a non-example. So we can put turtles down here below snakes. Is a dog a reptile?
No.
Why is a dog not a reptile?
It's got hair.
Very good, Sean. It does have hair. So we can just put a dog over here for the non-example. We're still unsure about the frog, which we'll come back to here in a second. Does anybody else have an example of a reptile that they could think of, that maybe their friend has a pet reptile or something?
A lizard.
A lizard, very good. You know the Geico commercials with the little green Geico on there? He's actually a reptile too, which is kind of funny. And so, so a chicken lays eggs. And that's always present in a reptile. Could we classify a chicken as a reptile or no?
No.
Why not?
They have feathers, is that hair?
That counts as hair, so they don't have scales. So you're right on that part. And then chickens do have lungs, but they're not going to be cold-blooded. They are warm-blooded animals like us humans are. So we can put like a chicken over here. And I think that's enough examples and non-examples. So now we're going to go to the practice of the new examples. And this is where we're going to try to classify this stinker right over here, the frog. We don't know for sure. Shaylin, you thought it was an amphibian. Sean thought it was a reptile. So are frogs cold-blooded? So you know that? It's going to be kind of a tough question, I know. So frogs are cold-blooded, so that would make them a reptile as far as that goes. And do frogs have lungs? They do have lungs. But frogs do not lay eggs, actually. So that's why we get the classification as the non-example. So that's the kind of tricky one, because the frogs do have 3 of the always present characteristics, but they do have 1 of the never present characteristics, which is why we do classify the never. So we can just put frog over here in the last non-example. I can definitely see why you thought a frog would be a reptile, Sean, because I thought a frog was a reptile until just a couple days ago. And lastly now, we are going to tie down our good definition with number 7 here for the T in concept. And this is what we just create a definition of what a reptile actually is. So when we do that, we can just take some of the always present characteristics and maybe an example. So a reptile always lays eggs, always has scales, lungs, and is always cold-blooded. So when we write our definition, I'm just going to put it over here outside of the box. So a reptile is, what is a reptile? We can just pick one of the always present things. Maybe cold-blooded. Cold-blooded. So a reptile is a cold-blooded, and then we can pick another one. Do you guys like the vertebrate one that always have the backbone? We must put that one in there. So a reptile is a cold-blooded vertebrate that has, now we need like some sort of physical characteristic. What do they have?
Scales.
Scales, good job, Lil. That has scales or skewts. And then we can finish it off with one more always present example. Let's do the lays eggs. So by going through that, you get number 7 here, the tie down definition, which is going to be a reptile is a cold-blooded vertebrate that has scales or scutes and lays eggs. So now when you guys are walking through the park next time and you see something, you're kind of curious about what it is, you can remember that definition and then see if the characteristics match up for the always present or the never present. And that'll help you decide if something's a reptile or not. So does anybody have any questions as far as how the graphic organizer goes right now? We just got to remember that concept is the acronym, and it stands for Convey the Concept. The overall concept is the vertebrae, for example. Note keywords, classify characteristics, explore examples, practice with new examples, and then tie down the definition. And we'll be using this it's called the CER, which is a content enhancement routine. We'll be using this form quite a bit here in the later coming lessons just to tie down like an actual definition of something before we move into the actual more harder content. And then tomorrow we will also be going over another lesson about reptiles, and we'll be continuing on reading the Reptile Kingdom book. Any more questions? All right, good job. Oh no.
I think